Yeah, you're all very welcome to the Racing Room. Back after a 2 week hiatus is myself, Ronan Groom, aka Harry and Tony. Plenty to discuss and catch up on the podcast this week. But before we get stuck in, lads, I just want to cast you back to a little video AK put up on his X account there on Thursday down in Killarney. I believe you're in JM Reedy's AK, is that correct? Am I reading that right?
I haven't a clue where we were, to be honest with you.
But
I
it
don't know.
looked
We
like
were in a pub
famous pub
anyway.
in Killarney, J.M. Reedy's,
Yeah.
and the title of the tweet was, "Is the difference between the majority of pints of Guinness overstated?"
God.
So to quote you, AK, you had suggested that all pints of Guinness are probably the same in all pubs, and to quote you said,
That's a,
"It's the
that's a
same
that's a
stuff."
misquote straight away, but carry on.
I have the exact quote up here. You said all pints is the same stuff, the same fucking pipes, the same cleaning equipment. It's all nonsense. So I'm just going to say straight away what a rank bad take that is, and bring in the lads here to either back me up or back you up. So Tony, Harry, any views on this of pints differing from pub to pub?
Massively different. They massively differ. I think this suggests that AK has just had a very rarefied upbringing. He's only ever been to very smart establishments.
My take on it is, I don't really drink a lot, but I think it's how desperate you are for a drink. If you haven't kind of like, if it's the first one after a day out or something like that, so I think that hits the spot. The best one I've ever had is probably in Falmouth in the early summer. Actually, it was genuinely kind of like a wow moment when I tasted it, but I hadn't really been on it.
Jesus Christ. You sound like, honestly, I just think I understand that there's differences between some, but I'm just saying the majority of them are just all the same. Absolutely all the same. I think I think the spread, I think the bell curve is isn't too dramatic. Like I think most of them are the same. It's
Have you
absolutely
ever
Yeah.
sent
nonsense. Like
Have you ever sent many back, Roland?
Now, I'm not a Guinness drinker, believe it or not, but I know for sure that this, from listening to lads down the years, that
that's a
Guinness
good
from pub
barometer.
to pub
That's a good
is
barometer. How many pints have you sent back? Because I'd say barely any. Yeah.
But from drinking my own, I'm a Smithwick's man myself, and drinking that during the weekend down in Kerry myself was absolutely sensational. So I'm not just going to let AK hang himself even more there and not say any more. And we'll leave your comments below and tell us what you think. But Harry, you were also you're in Portrush at the weekend. How did you get on? How did you find that experience?
Oh, but it was fantastic. Actually, didn't get on very well from a betting perspective, sadly. But it was a very good 4 days and a very worthy winner. Unbelievably impressive performance from Scotty Scheffler. The only thing I'd say about it is interesting how many American flags appear in the top 10 or 12 players, and I think without wishing to denigrate any of them, it was. I know that course very well. It was an extraordinarily still links tournament. There was barely a breath of wind over the 4 days. A bit like the year that I think Cameron Smith won at, was it St Andrews?
Yeah.
There just wasn't a breath of wind. And I think that it's interesting to see there aren't particularly the kind of the usual suspects in the top 10, not very obvious links players, albeit that the gutter up. Is that how it's pronounced? Gutter up.
Goshawk, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bristol.
I thought it might be Gotero or something, knowing our American cousins. But I know he won the Scottish Open the other day. But yeah, that was my only sort of observation. It was beautiful weather for, other than a bit of rain on the Thursday morning and a few showers on the Friday. It's astonishingly good weather, dream golf conditions, and the idea of catching Scotty when he was that far clear on the Sunday morning. I didn't actually look at the prices, but he must have been absolutely nothing come Sunday morning, I would have thought.
Fives on, I think.
Yeah, 2 to 9 we put with AK bets, Tony. But yeah.
How did you get on, AK?
How did I get on punting wise?
Fancy wise,
I
yeah.
think I lost small actually. With it being majors can usually turn over telephone numbers, which is usually good. But yeah, I think I lost small on the week. Harris English would have been a really good result for me. A big sweep of a result.
Yeah, I
So,
can imagine.
yeah, just your man just kind of ruined it, didn't he? Like in every
Yeah.
respect, he was just too good, too far ahead, and too consistent and unbelievable off the tee. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just class. Like you just know you just know he's putting for birdie for 10 foot from 10 foot pretty much all the time. Like it's he's a tough watch when you're not on him anyway.
Yeah.
You were saying it's probably you've got a lot of history with that area, haven't you, Harry? You were saying?
Yeah, my dad's from very near Portrush, and we used to spend a lot of time over here. And yeah, so that's why I know quite a lot of the courses around here quite well. It's sort of it's a very big golfing part of the world, this North Coast. And yeah, it was fantastic to see it being played on holes that you've played yourself a lot of times, and very interesting. They play it somewhat differently to me, but it was very good to watch.
So you're a bit of a Brian Harmon, and today you're just
In what sense?
height and
height-wise, yeah, no,
and
absolutely,
distance and distance.
yeah. No, I don't hit it a mile, but it's more directions that concern than anything.
Very good.
Was that you begrudging the wind not being up, Harry? You were saying every time you go out, it probably is really windy, and that's the only reason you're struggling.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, also, if I had all these people looking for my balls, I think I'd go around an awful lot lower scores.
Brilliant. Before we get into the racing review, Tony, just want to touch on Tommo. Is his last commentary at Wolverhampton Tuesday night? Is it? Is that's the last one for him?
I think so. Yeah. Obviously, it's been coming a while off, isn't it? So yeah, we won't be nasty here, but I think if he's employed by racecourses, which he has been, then fair play to him to lengthen out to 74. But you do feel sorry for some of the younger commentators that he's probably kept off the rotor up until now, because he was never good to start with, wasn't he? But the thing about what Tommo did, he brought a lot more to the race courses than just the commentary, which is probably why they employed him. He does a lot of kind of like Tommo. You used to do a lot of Tommo TV with the crowds before and after. So I don't think he was probably employed for his commentary alone. But yeah, I don't think we've probably seen the last of him. There's probably something other money earning around the corner. But yeah, 74, last one tomorrow. So yeah, good luck to him.
Is he still doing his radio show on Skirmish FM or whatever it's called? Is he keeping that one going?
Don't know about that.
I'm sure he's got a radio show on a local radio station.
I think he was a big net positive for racing overall, to be honest with you. I think he did, like you say, I think you can't underestimate the interactions with non-racing people at the racing for a positive thing. I think he was probably very good for that stuff.
Yeah.
Good luck to him.
Good innings, whatever the case may be, and probably see him a bit more. But Tony, do you want to take us through the racing review? I suppose Irish Oaks taking centre stage. We're not going to touch too much on the Curragh on the inside part of the white rails. We'll just do the action on the track this time. But it was probably a low-key-ish racing weekend. The Oaks wasn't hugely inspiring beforehand. Mini Hawk getting the job done at long odds on there for Aidan O'Brien and Ryan Moore.
No, probably the the most low-key Irish Oaks we've seen in ages, actually. 7 runners, 5 no hopers. Favourite one at 2 to 11. So yeah, that was pretty underwhelming. Al Riffa won a weak Curragh Cup by 5 lengths. And over here, it was, like I said, it's probably the kind of like most downbeat weekend of the year from a racing point of view. But that's it's good news for Rod Millman, who's very, very good trainer. Hasn't got the biggest string, but he maximises their efficiency. He won another Weatherby Super Sprint at Newbury by a short head from the favourites. So that's a big payday for that yard. So fair play to those. Other than that, probably the main action was the racing review section is probably away from the racetrack. We had the latest Kia merry-go-round, continuing with news that his £2 million Eva Royal Ascot purchase ghostwriter is being sent from Clive Cox to Kevin Philippart de Foy. Probably not the biggest surprise in the world, but a bit of a kick in the bollocks for Cox there, who's had him for all of his career. Yeah, I think we had a question on that as well. I didn't see the interview himself. I mean, I might as well bring it in here now. We had a question from John Salibius. He said, after Arizona won at the Curragh, R.T. Bryan did a long interview with Keir Jabson, who's clearly never met a camera he didn't like. Does Kevin Phillipart Defoe, great name, quite Trumpian, need his head looking at in agreeing to be Ammo's main trainer? Like you said, the devil will be in the detail there. We touched upon this a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? He's bringing some of his own horses to the yard as well, and I think he'd probably have a plan B in place if it doesn't all work out. But considering the money Keir spent in recent weeks and months, and the Freemason Lodge yard that he's brought, then it's probably an offer he couldn't refuse. But yeah, he'll have a backup plan. So, and if he does do well, then he's going to get some really good blue bloods to train, isn't he? So yeah, I think that's probably fair assessment of that. And also, if he has bought that yard for a lot of money in Newmarket, he's going to want all of his horses there. So if he does buy horses from other yards, I think the transfers are going to continue. Couple of other news from Aidan O'Brien. Looks like Lake Victoria and Albert Einstein may not be around for the rest of the year now. Cynics would suggest he's been talking at Albert Einstein, because of that reason, and maybe we won't see that horse again next year as well. But if he has got a lot of injuries at 2, but Lake Victoria would be a big blow to them for their miling plans. So I'd be interested to see what happens with those two. And this pattern committee stuff bores me rigid, but it looks like Leopardstown are reinstating the Grade 1 2-mile novices chase at the Christmas fixture. They're binning the 3-mile Grade 1 novice chase, and looks like they are upping the 4-heen novice chase from 2-mile 3 to 2-mile 5 to compensate for that middle ground. So yeah, that's the racing review. Pretty low key, which is why probably I took last week off.
Very good. Very good. We will get stuck into our topics, lads, and start with the racing tax. So, since we discussed this on our last pod, I'm guessing there feels like the industry is kind of come along a lot since that. It's very much prevalent now in the news cycle everywhere you look. So this is the government's plan to harmonise taxation in the gambling industry, which being the increasing of tax on racing to 21% in line with casino products as well. So the BHA are still saying this is going to cost 66 million to the industry and potentially more. So the BHA themselves have lots of PR since they've published a copy and paste email that people can send to their local MPs over there in Britain. And Brad Dunshee has been out saying horse racing has a uniquely symbiotic relationship with betting, and the government must recognise this. It is why we're calling for betting on racing to be taxed at a different and lower rate to all other forms of betting. Just to mention, so the Racing Post very forthright with their work on this campaign against the racing tax, and kind of generally testing the pulse of the view that's out there. Pretty good piece from Peter Scargill the other day as well, getting the flavour of Labour MP views, which doesn't seem generally open to the proposal that, or more open to the proposal than it seems would be preferable for racing. Today, I believe the Treasury's is the public consultation deadline. So what's going to happen is Treasury civil servants will review responses in the coming weeks before making recommendations to ministers. And it is then expected that ministers will make a final decision on whether to go ahead with plans to bring the racing tax up to 21%, which could be in and around October. So, AK, I don't know how much of a general feel you have for this, of what way it's going, but I'll put it to you this way. If we were going to price this up and stick it on the old big prices tab, how would you be betting it right now as to which way they'll go with this?
Which way they'll go, I haven't a clue. I don't see any option that's not bad for horse racing in anything that's proposed. I don't understand why harmonisation has to be achieved in the first instance. It doesn't make any sense to me with different products. Different products probably should have different tax rates. I think racing's making a monumental error separating itself from sports in the first instance. I think that's going to be a grave error that it's going to regret for a very long time, or until somebody reverses what comes down the line. One of the fascinating things about all this, and I read is he called something Butterworth? Sam, is it Sam Butterworth or something from Seb Butterworth? Sorry. I know we mentioned some of his comments after the David Power Jockeys Cup previously. He wrote an interesting enough article, I thought, for the Racing Post. The thing that blew my mind in that was between the Flutter brands, they've put 100 million into sponsorship and promoting the sport. Like, it's just like, my God, that's kind of like kazoo stuff, isn't it? Like, it's kind of like, what are you getting back from that? Like, I'd say if you switch that to zero, there wouldn't be that much impact on anything. Like, horse racing, I honestly don't think horse racing understands its reliance on bookmakers making money from whatever they make money from. And like, I'm looking at stuff, I think the impact separating, I think a rise in the tax on sports and whatever casino as well. I'm more interested in the sports side of things, to be honest with you. I think a rise in sports tax and no rise in horse racing tax, which seems to be what is being campaigned for, I think is a monumental error. Monumental error. And I think that'll be borne out if something of that nature comes in. There's this misbelief that a carve-out for racing from a tax perspective is going to mean it's so naive that it's going to direct bookmakers to be trumpeting horse racing over sports. We looked at our last couple of thousand customers there, and not many of them are signing up to bet on horse racing as bet number one. Like, horse racing is becoming an add-on, making the products that customers want to bet in the 21st century, or in 2025 more expensive for bookmakers. I don't know where this belief is that that's going to be good for horse racing. Bookmakers are going to treat the overall products together and work out where people aren't betting and save money on them. And I think you're going to see a lot less extra places, which I think will actually might be good for punters in the end if prices become more fair. But I think you're going to see a hell of a lot less sponsorship. And I think it's unbelievably naive to think that bookmakers are going to start directing turnover towards racing, which is an unbelievably expensive product as it is, making other products more expensive. I think it's unbelievably misinformed to think that's going to direct bookmakers or punters to bet more on a very, very poor horse racing product, to be honest. It's just not going to happen. I think it's going to be everything proposed I see as a negative for horse racing. It's just on the scale of negativity. I think it's and to be honest with you, I'm at the stage where I think bad decisions and bad policy should have consequences, and I kind of hope there's some kind of effect of this on horse racing, because like I'm personally sick of horse racing thinking it's above other things, and it's just not. And I think a realization of that would be quite nice.
Okay, that's kind of kind of an industry view as such, or what might entail. I put that question to you, Harry, that I actually asked AK. What do you get a general feel for the campaigns that the Racing Post are putting out, the BHA are putting out, what way this might go? Is it having any positive effect at all, or were we going into a very hard tide here that it's basically what way would you see it percentage wise, whether this kind of goes through these proposals to raise the tax?
I know no more than AK about that, Ronan. I wonder if the fact that the BHA have relatively recently taken the line that they have suggests that the mood music is that it is going to happen, the harmonisation is going to happen. And I'm long on the record as saying that I think that horse racing should have distanced itself from fixed odds betting for years, and should have been doing that for a very long time. I didn't ever really see a scenario where it was seeking, and if it is, this is just the next point I want to come on to, whereas it's seeking to distance itself from other sports betting. That is a real surprise to me that has come about. The only thing I'd say is I'm a bit confused as to what it is that the BHA said. I mean, I think they're being treated as, or racing is being treated as though it is now part of a lobbying group for an increase in taxation on sports betting up to 21%. Or is, and that may be right, or is it the case that what it's saying is, if you are going to do other sports up to 21%, please leave us out of it for these various reasons? And it seems to me that if they're doing that, I don't think you can really blame horse racing for looking after its interests in that kind of self-protective mode. If what horse racing is doing is somehow encouraging an increase in tax on other sports, I think that is extremely surprising. But it's not completely clear to me which of those positions the BHA has taken yet.
I'd be surprised if the BHA has any idea what it's doing in that regard.
It struck me here that surely to come to the conclusions that they have done, and the wording in their statements suggests they are saying racing is a special case, different to sports betting, definitely different to casino betting. Surely they would have approached bookmakers in that regard. I mean, whether it be Flutter, Entain, Independence, or whatever. So they must have all got. I think even that article with Seb Butterworth, he just said he disagreed with the BHA approach as saying racing is a different case to sports betting. Surely they must approach a bookmaker to say, this is what we're thinking about doing. What are the negatives from that? But it just seems that they've ploughed on regardless. And like I say, they're asked. I mean, at the moment, obviously, we're in a situation whereby the government are going to go after every single tax pound that they can do, given what we've had in recent weeks.
Yeah.
So I think they're on the back foot massively there already. And I think in that Peter Scargill piece you referenced, Ronan, this is quite worrying as well, because if you remember a couple of weeks ago, I ventured to suggest that maybe the BHA weren't getting to the Labour MPs, and that's probably no surprise because Greg Swift, their PR man, has got all his background is with the Tories and certain roles there. And in that Scargill piece, it's interesting. He said it concluded Labour MPs are more open to tax rises than opposition politicians. And in that, they approached 58 MPs, and of them, 23 were Labour MPs. But only 6 of the 23 Labour MPs even replied. And you would have thought they would have picked out Labour MPs who had a history of commenting on betting matters. So if only 6 of 23 even replied, that suggests to me some bad news is coming down the line, because I just think even if it's 160 million is a drop in the ocean to the £5 billion pound tax hole that we've talked about, they're going to take it where they can get it. And and betting is not flavour of the day in the government, is it? As we can see, I just don't see how we're going to get away with the horse racing staying at 15% or even sports betting as well.
I honestly, I keep saying that firms are going to roll back on specials. They're not going to do any extra places. They're going to do a hell of a lot less sponsorship. I'd imagine that 100 million Flutter are putting in. I think that'll be called pretty. There'll be definite cuts to that, I'd imagine. I keep toying with the fact that, and people think some of the stuff I say about that is you might disagree that that'll be the consequence. I think that will be the consequence. I think we'll time to market with early prices. I think we'll look at everything, or rolling back on all the lower margin stuff. I think that's what we'll potentially do. But
that will happen presumably regardless of whether racing is carved out of this increase or not, will it?
Well, I think it will eventually, but I think it's just the time that I think the time where that will occur will probably be brought forward, is what I imagine.
How would that work?
I suppose you might call this might sound absolutely outrageous, but I also don't think the impact would be as bad on bookmakers if they turned horse racing off. I think people would be surprised how. I think people would be surprised how little regard people who bet on UK horse racing have for UK horse racing. I think a lot of them would switch products, and I think a lot of them would switch to foreign racing, or like I just think the UK horse racing industry has this opinion of itself that it's unbelievable.
Well, just wait a minute. Okay, wait 1 second. If what the BHA's position is, let's say their statement had been, we don't think you should increase the harmonized tax levels to 21%, but if you are going to, then please don't do it to horse racing. Do you have a problem with that?
But yeah, I think that's probably. But I still don't think. I don't think that's what they should do. I think they should be looking at the first point there, the harmonization point straight away. I think people should be specking out what the impact of even the best case scenario there, which you're saying is 15% and 21%. We're not factoring in levy. We're not factoring turnover tax in Ireland. There's loads of other different things that.
No, I'm just talking about the increase.
Yeah, streaming. Streaming's the biggest thing. Like one of the things I keep thinking to myself is I wouldn't want to be an investor in the Racing Post, because the Racing Post is as good as quite a big affiliate. I have no problem with that, by the way, but it's basically a very big affiliate. Oddschecker, the people that bought Oddschecker for 180 million quid, I'd imagine that might go down as an unbelievably bad buy. I wouldn't want to be an affiliate relying on, like we've seen Betfair Sports, but rolling back on, they don't do pretty much any affiliates anymore. They've closed their affiliate program. If I was an affiliate and there's more tax coming down the line, it just doesn't resonate with me that why do Flutter need to spend 100 million acquiring customers in racing anymore? If they've not acquired them at this point, it seems like gross overspend to me. If you haven't got a Paddy Power or a Sky Bet account now, you're not going to have one, I'd imagine. Like, what's the advertising achieving? If I was a streaming supplier, if I was ARC, my opinion on ARC for a long time is they've been fattening the pig for as big as they can, and they're desperate to pass it on and sell it to somebody. I think ARC, that is my read on ARC. And I think like affiliates like Oddschecker, the Racing Post, people that are fattening pigs like ARC with streaming costs for bookmakers, I think the music might stop and they'll still be holding the parcel. Like,
so what does racing? What do you like to see racing do in response to this?
I think people need to understand the ecosystem, and I'd speak to bookmakers about that. And I think you have to spec out the consequences. You have to understand what the consequences are going to be of X. I don't know what you do. I genuinely don't know what you do. My negative opinion is I just can't see how the black market's just not going to grow exponentially, and the UK market will detract or contract in real terms. I just can't see any outcome. I think the customers' options will become much less. I think then there'll be a reliance on the people left behind, the people that still have bookmakers in those conditions. They'll be smaller in number, and it'll be more monopolized, and it'll be more cartelly, and I think it'll be bad for consumers, and I think the tax rates will get passed on to the consumer. And it won't grow. I think it's just all the outcomes are bad. There's nothing wrong with a thriving gambling market. Gambling is like it's an activity in which, what is it, 22 million people participate.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on. I don't think any of us think that the rate should be harmonised, and that the reasons given by the government, which is that they are trying to harmonise.
I just don't. Yeah,
across the country, it just makes no sense.
Right.
But let me put it this way: if it was going to happen, right, we knew it was going to happen. At the last minute, there was a button that racing could push that says it's not. You can stay at 15%. Are you saying that racing shouldn't push that button?
I don't think racing understands the consequence.
Well, no, that's a slightly different question, which I understand. But we're talking racing can't stop it happening across all sports. But it appears to have some leverage.
Campaign for it with the understanding of what the consequences will be, rather than just say carve us out and think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I suppose
I take your point.
the one thing the BHA couldn't be seen to be doing here is nothing, even if you don't
Yeah,
agree with what they're
sure.
proposing. They would have got absolutely coated if they
Yeah,
just
and I agree with that. I agree with that.
But what I think in a nutshell, what you're saying is if horse racing is kept at 15%, sports betting is up to 21%, and casino is up from 21% to whatever. Are you saying that in itself is not in any way a win for horse racing?
No, and that is because it's separating itself from sports betting, which is a monumental error, is what I'm saying. I don't have much particular issue with it separating itself from casino. Inherently different products, different rates of return, different everything. Horse racing is a sports product, and I just think it's of the belief, the industry is of the belief that separating itself from sports betting means that it's going to get more turnover from sports. That's what I think that they think.
I think they
And
probably.
I don't think they understand that that is not what's going to happen. It's going to get less.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it there, gents, because we spent a lot of time in that. I guess all of this is going on um, as the will he won't he merry-go-round for Lord Allen keeps going around as to will he join the BHA as chair. I believe this day next week, the four shareholders of the BHA Racecourse Owners Association, the Race Course Association, Thoroughbred Breeders Association, and licensed personnel, they're all due to meet at a BHA board meeting next Monday, that's the 28th, to have their views heard. Um, where are we at with this, Tony? What's the general feeling with the Lord Ellen latest? I heard David Ord on Look on Sunday suggest it was odds against that that Lord Ellen would join would take up his position. What are you kind of feeling with the whole thing?
Um, yeah, well, considering that he should have been in position at the start of June, I think that's a fair betting take. Um, a fair opinion to form. But the bottom line is nothing seems to have changed. There was a story in the Racing Post at the start of last week saying the ROA and the RCA are the main barriers to Lord Adam taking up his position. The Racecourse Owners Association Chief Executive Louise Norman said that's completely false. Basically, all this is obviously being played behind closed doors, and we can't even see through the keyhole to what is going on here. I think it's fair to say that from the beginning of this process, the big stumbling block was always going to be the race courses and them ceding any power, to the BHA. The race courses have got control of the fixture list, and I can't see any situation whereby they, as a collective, give that up. I mean, ARC, I'd imagine Credis would be told from above that no way in the world are you going to just let our fixture, give a cede control of our fixture list to the regulatory body. I just can't see that happening from a commercial point of view. And if you're ARC, no way in the world would you do it. Now it sounds like the big independents like Ascot would be more receptive, to giving more power. But then again, if they turn around and told them what to do with the Royal fixture and other massive fixtures, they'll just laugh at them as well, saying that's not going to happen. The big stumbling block here is, I had a look, that the RCA have to have 75% approval from their members to actually get any change through here. And I would imagine the big racecourse groups like ARC, the Jockey Club racecourses, etc., at least one of those aren't going to play ball. So I think all this is kind of like dead in the water. So in a nutshell, nothing's changed. And the original position of the RCA holding all the aces here and not willing to play cards stands.
Yeah.
A pretty depressing kind of situation if that's how it does.
It's typical horse racing though, isn't it? It's literally here's a guy that looks to get it, everyone's behind him, and a vested interest can block that being achieved. It seems like this is where the sport's at as part of its managed decline.
Stone Age kind of thinking, really. But we'll see. We don't want to take too long on that because we have talked about it plenty, and it's not much has changed. We'll maybe next Monday, maybe there'll be more news that comes out of that meeting, but we'll see what happens there. Just to get away from, I guess, the heavy industry stuff, we'll just touch on a betting feature from the Racing Post last week, written by Lewis Porteous. He was basically detailing the trend towards a greater fluctuation in overnight prices to the on the day or kind of on the show prices from the last 13 years. Get into the article already, but I'll definitely tip my cap to Lewis for collecting the data on this. I'd suggest that was an absolute pain, trawling through each of those races and stuff, and then having to account for non-runners, etc. So it was well put together, if anything. But did this just confirm what we know already, Tony, about overnight prices, soft markets, bookmakers just not taking much chances 24 hours before a race?
Yeah,
And yeah, more or
they
less.
pulled together various strands from various people. None of it was remotely new, was it? Like you said, fair play to him for pulling those stats together on, I think it was 13 individual weekends, stroke races. The bottom line is bookmakers have relied upon a thriving exchange market to give their prices some solidity, and that is just fallen off a cliff, hasn't it? I mean, it's absolutely embarrassing. And I think AK may have made this point about Kalani last week, and he was like 10 minutes to the off, and and literally there were quids either side of the market.
Mm.
When I obviously, for example, on a Saturday, and I look at every single market from about 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and those markets have been up since about 11:30 on the exchange on a Thursday. And we're talking some big weekends here as well. Some of the markets have therefore been up about 42 hours, and there's literally hardly anything in them. And that's the win market. I mean, the place markets and the each way markets are virtually empty. I'm looking at some races at 5 o'clock on a Saturday morning, like I said, and they've been up for a thick end of 2 days. And the vast majority haven't even traded 10 grand. And when you say 10 grand, obviously you can half that for the amount backed.
Mm.
And they're just, it's people, bookmakers are pricing up, on a kind of like an iceberg that's kind of like, recording a temperature of 200 plus degrees. It's kind of like everything crumbles away. If I guarantee, basically, it's got to the point whereby on a Saturday morning, I reckon you could make any horse favourite in any race for about £1,000. If you stuck £1,000 into a market, I reckon you can make any horse favourite in any market. That's the fragility we're working with here. And what the Racing Post did, it's fair enough because they're bringing up a subject that everyone's talking about, but there was nothing new in that. It's just the death of the exchange from a horse racing point of view is everything about this situation.
Yeah, I would echo that. There's nothing new. I suppose the only new aspect of it was the conclusion, which was a bit naive, in my opinion, to say that here's how punters can take advantage. Well, you can probably for two bets, and then you can't get bets on. So I don't think that's. I don't think. I think directing punters to the most illiquid markets is probably not what punters should be doing if they want to stay active in the betting market, which is no fault of their own, in fairness. Yeah, it's just like you said. We mentioned the Killarney. I was on track at Killarney for two days last week, and it was actually 11 minutes to the off where I took a screenshot, and you're talking 11 to 4 shots that have £7 in each box, either side at 3.8 and 3.85, £7. I think we've probably seen the death of the exchange. I also think the exchange might not be the worst purchase for somebody because it's if it wasn't for the skins seed getting liquidity on other markets like cricket and things like that, it'd be close to worthless, I'd say. And just adapting some of the policies around how many people they've kicked off the exchange could reinvigorate a little bit of liquidity, I think. but yeah, I think yeah, the conclusions there I thought were pretty naive, directing people to very, very weak markets. I think it leads into the topics I keep saying around guarantee prices, and like we all know guarantee prices have been rolled back on plenty in the industry. And I think when you factor in the life cycle of a market, it wouldn't surprise me if pretty much every UK horse race is bet to under 100% at the best price each horse was available at any point in the life of the market. I'd actually be quite interested in seeing the number. It'd be unbelievably hard to track, and I don't think Lewis could do it, I don't think I could do it. But understanding how much movement there is across races, across the life cycle of a market, what the lowest over end was for each market at the best price available, because I'd imagine that that's getting lower and lower, which suggests that there's a hell of a lot more volatility, as we all know. But I think it's just getting worse and worse and worse. On an expensive product, like it's just all the ingredients are there for bad things, for the growth of those products, I think.
Just I know we're going to move on, but it's interesting to say about buying, someone going in there and buying the exchange. I was at a poker night at Burt Black's would have been about 2 years ago now, and a lot of people there. There were some very money people there, some plenty of ex-Betfair people as well, and they were talking about getting up a syndicate to actually go in there and actually bid for the exchange part of the business. Obviously that came to nothing, but they were very serious about that. They put a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of analysis into that, and they thought they could get it back.
I'd imagine it's for sale.
Yeah,
I'd imagine it's for sale.
it must have been. They must have heard some. They must have heard some kind of like talk about it. People would be receptive to someone coming in to buy that, because the exchange market. I mean, it's just withering on the vine, isn't it? So if someone came in and offered them a decent, not sure how logistically it could work, but people were looking in that 2 years ago. So, but presumably they couldn't get over the line.
I heard a story recently, and I can't back this up at all, but I heard a story from somebody saying internally at Flutter there was two jobs available at the same time: the head of online at Paddy Power and the head of the exchange, Betfair Exchange. And internally there wasn't a single applicant for the head of the exchange, because it's literally just why would you want to do that? Like it's literally like it's probably career suicide, I'd say. There's nothing there. Like there's no opportunity for it to grow under the current regime. So I don't know.
I just like I know we got to move it. I had a look at the British Lions market on Saturday. I know it's a secondary market, but I wanted to have a bet on the score at halftime market. This is first test British Lions. It was about 10-11, 10 minutes before kickoff. There was 236 quid match on the halftime market, and I couldn't have a bet. It's unbelievable. Anyway,
Great. Not great now. We'll see how things develop there. Harry, I'll bring you in here for the next few. We're going to zoom through a few of these kind of cases that were mentioned over the last week, starting with the fine for John and Katie Gosden over the two cases of ketamine. So last Tuesday it was revealed the Gosdens have been fined £3,000 after two of their horses tested positive for banned substance ketamine last summer. The breaches were found to be the result of cross-contamination from a female staff member who was a user of the recreational drug. So we've had this type of case before, just a kind of one of those unfortunate things, but it seems to be getting these types of cases becoming more and more apparent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very harsh on trainers. It is in practical terms impossible you can put up as many signs as you want and as many hand washing stations and send out as many emails as you want. But someone who wants to take ketamine 3 times a week is probably going to continue to take ketamine 3 times a week, and that's what happened by all accounts in this instance. And we have a strict liability rule in racing about cross contamination or contamination of illicit substances, the trainer is the responsible person under the rules, and that's where it is. So it's just a question of the penalty once these come in. And as you know, as I've always said, one of the sort of strange elements of these strict liability rules is, if masked gunmen came onto your yard, tied everyone up and injected a horse, it would still be the trainer who was responsible for that happening. Now, they wouldn't get a very strong penalty, but they'd get a financial penalty. Well, they might not in those circumstances, I would hope. But those circumstances seem quite unlikely. My point is that it's really tough for trainers. And funny enough, it's really, the bigger the yard, the more difficult it is, I think, because you have tend to have a much higher turnover of staff. It's much harder to control the number of people. You don't have a family-run operation is going to be much easier to keep control of, one would have thought. I do think it's very harsh that, because it is, regardless of the press and it all being made clear that they're not at fault, it's all over the newspapers. It is reputationally harmful. So I continue to think that trainers are a bit hard done by these rules.
I tend to agree there. Yeah, hard one to look after. We go on to a race at Bath last Wednesday. Harry, I'm not sure if you caught this, but it was Captain Brett, ridden by Callum Shepherd, demoted to second place when the Stewart's team cause of interference to the favourite I Want My Time With You, who's ridden by Hector Crouch. I guess this is a bit more unique than your standard interference ruling, with the Stewart's deeming that Callum Shepherd had used his right arm to push Crouch away. And all parties haven't mentioned any kind of news for any sort of appeal as of yet, but he got 5 days, I think, for this Shepherd. Any precedence here, or for this, or what do you kind of think of a case like this?
None that immediately spring to mind. I because of the golf, I haven't watched it, and they've also stayed very stum, both sides, on what they think about it. So it's quite hard to think of anything to say other than that it's a case of improper riding, which is a slightly mysterious breach of the riding rules. It's not careless. It's not dangerous. It's something that sort of sits off to the side of them. I can't think of an occasion off the top of my head of a case being fought over a push with an arm from one jockey to another. No doubt people might have in this jurisdiction anyway, might be able to bring some to our attention. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, and particularly what the evidence, if we ever find out what the evidence given by the jockeys as to what caused it. But beyond that, I fear I don't really have much to say about it.
I just very quickly, I did have a look at it, and it appears I only got the side on version, didn't get the head on. It appears that the winning jockey did actually try and push the horse rather than the jockey. He's trying to push the horse away.
I mean, is he going to make an argument to the effect that he was doing it for safety purposes, that the horse was encroaching on him? And
yeah, like I said, it'll be interesting to see if they do bring anything there. If they did bring up the safety element.
It has been under litigated, the safety element of the interference rules, and because there are exceptions to, for example, use of the whip for safety purposes. And that I can't really think of any particularly obvious examples off the top of my head, but again, that doesn't mean there aren't any.
Yeah. Move on to just a little development in the John Dance story, I suppose. So Barclays has been fined 3 million and will have to pay 6.3 million to clients of Wealth Tech, which is the wealth management firm that was founded by John Dance, after they were deemed to fail to perform basic checks that allowed the unauthorized firm to hold clients, putting 34 million at risk. So this has arisen out of the well-documented controversy involving Wealthtech's founder John Dance. Had been charged with laundering over 64 million to fund a lavish lifestyle, which included obviously owning very high-profile horses in recent years. Don't know if you caught this, Harry, if there's anything to add on it as such, but at least some people getting some money back out of it.
I think that's all there is really at the moment to take from that, Ronan. The slightly strange element perhaps is that they are being paid out before he's actually been found guilty of any offences at the moment. When I say paid out, there seems to be a voluntary payment from Barclays to them. no doubt, to keep their regulator happy. So I suspect what's happened there is that the regulator has taken the view that Barclays have breached these rules regardless of whether Dance has committed any criminal offences, and I imagine that's what happened. They seem to. He didn't have it appears he didn't have FCA approval to hold client funds, and the bank let them have a bank account. I think it seems that they didn't do enough due diligence into whether whether that money was client money or WealthTech's own money. And it seems that it might well have been client money by the sounds of things. So that I think is the breach. But beyond that, not much to see here, certainly from sort of racing point of view.
Tony, ITV Racing signed a 4-year deal to. They're going to be able to show terrestrial racing on their channel up to 2030. Has to be positive, good news for British racing.
Yeah, it's. I don't think they've actually signed it yet, but the story's obviously been given to Lee Mottershead, who's very on side with ITV, that this is going to happen in the late summer, early autumn. Going to be extended to 2030, which has obviously got to be a very good thing. In the article, it underlined the fact that the Tour de France is going to be losing terrestrial coverage this year, so we should be very, very thankful that we have a terrestrial presence. So, yeah, very, very good news.
Very good. And some positive news on the attendances for the first 6 months of the year in Britain. So just to summarise this story from the Racing Post, 5% increase in attendances for the first half of the year. So a report released by Racecourse Association for the first 6 months of the year showed total attendances increased by 5%. I won't give you the exact figures there, but a positive thing there. So there was also a 3.6% boost in the average attendance. And obviously the Racing Post used this as another bit of weight behind their campaign against the racing tax. But the Racecourse Association chief, David Armstrong, also came out and was obviously trumpeting this a lot. So he said a 5.1% overall increase in the major is a major achievement during a testing time for British racing and the wider economy. This, of course, is not something which occurs overnight. Racecourse teams who work tirelessly to develop the marketing and operational plans to promote and host these. While the campaign is in its early phase, I think the impact of the sports national campaign, the going is good, is beginning to be seen. I look forward to seeing how it progresses into the third quarter of the year alongside natural highlights in the calendar. So you all laughed. You all laughed.
They just ruin it with stuff like that. That's why nobody trusts anything that comes out of people's mouths. Isn't it? Like, what are you on about? Like, going is good. That one poxy advert. Like, what else has there been? Rubbish.
Yeah,
Absolute rubbish. And it's probably not a like-for-like number as well, if we're going to call a spade, because they changed the formula, didn't they? How they were. Like, I'm all for good news, but no, that's nonsense.
I would imagine the ridiculously good spring stroke summer has got a lot to do with that. But yeah, I got someone in touch with me on Twitter last week and just said, I've just heard for the first time since the launch that advert, and it was on TalkSport 2 or something. That advert seems to have disappeared from the face of the earth, doesn't it?
As did the man who made it.
Yeah.
Like I think everyone's invested with trying to get more people going racing. But listen, they changed the formula. They count kids. There's a few different tweaks to that formula. It's not a like-for-like comparison for a start. And then just to throw that going is good. Christ almighty. The gravy must be nice and tasty, because that's just nonsense. Like, absolutely nonsense. Like the people who still defend Premier Racing. Do you remember that? I don't know if that's still going. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Just rubbish. Absolute rubbish.
Proof positive, we can get negativity out of any positive.
It's nonsense.
I think it's fair. It was a fair grasp from the boy Armstrong to claim that was had any effect on him. In fairness, but we'll see how it goes.
He's about 70 odd, isn't he?
We get another 5-year tenure anyway off the back of that.
Now, just to briefly touch on a bit of news with Plumpton, lads, I'll read this out unless anybody want to come in. But Plumpton's plans to sell land for housing development as a means of unlocking funds to upgrade its facilities remain on hold after a proposal was rejected by the local council last week. So the track may well look to appeal this decision. They were going to use land from a temporary car park to sell this to developers for the construction of 9 homes. But that's been rejected by the council in what seemed to be a pretty tight decision. So the racecourse was hoping to use the funds for projects like upgrading the stables and refurbishing the infrastructure of the stands and stuff. So we'll see how that develops coming times. We'll move on to the question sense, and we only have 5 questions, so we can zoom through them. David Brown asks, well, next statement here with Peachy. He says Peachy Carnahan ran 168 times, but placed in none of his final 20 races and ended his career at just 37. Should the BHA consider a welfare safeguard for horses showing long-term decline to help avoid scenarios like what happened to this horse last week, Tony?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? I don't think you can get a catch-all rule here, can you?
No.
The horse was in massive decline. Like you said, he was 11-year-old, dropped down to a mark of just 37. There was nothing, although the horse was in decline, there was nothing to suggest he had any physical problems. But at that age, it's inevitable for any horse. So it's a tricky one. Whenever a horse kind of like dies in that circumstances, you are going to get this kind of kickback. And to be fair, I mean, I wasn't on Twitter last week, and I had a look, and this did get a lot of uptake from there. I don't know. I hadn't seen the actual video of the race about the horse breaking down, and I imagine it would have been edited out anyway. But it just seems like the horse was well cared for at home, was owned by an 80-year-old who visited the horse every day, did the normal polos and carrots routine. It just sounds like the horse was very well cared for, but he was just in decline, and something unfortunate happened. But if you banned every horse from racing that was running off that kind of mark, showing signs of decline, I suppose the upside is for bookmakers, you wouldn't get any Barney Curley gambles, would you, after 3 years off the track, age 87? But no, I don't think you can. As unfortunate as it is, and as a bad advert it is for racing, not their fault at all. I don't think you can legislate for this, because it's like I said, it's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think there are some extreme examples where I always remember, someone will know the name of the horse, but I always remember a couple of years ago, stood at Killarney taking bets, and there was an 8-runner race, I think it was, and there was 1,000 to 1 shot. There was 1,000 to 1 to place at the start of the race. It was like a fucking 18-year-old or something like that. Like, it's absolutely obscene age number, and had zero form and had been beat 60 lengths in all its previous runs, and it was running in a race at Sligo. And you're just looking at that going, how is that being allowed to run? I think there are some absolutely standout ones that just, I'm not saying this is one. I don't know anything about this particular horse. But there are some ones where you just like, there should be a mechanism where people can have them reviewed and report them and things like that, I think, because that horse in particular shouldn't have been run on the track, I don't think.
I tend to agree. Didn't Ronan McNally train a horse to win at like 15 or something?
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, he did. But he probably had some form, I'd imagine, at some stage.
It does. It's not just that I mean, if the BHA and whatever are going to get involved, I mean, I always remember Istelbach. There was a lot of Willie Won't He Run in that, I think, 2020, 22 champion hurdle. And Willie run there, and I think he got pulled up lame after a couple of hurdles. So it's a really tricky one.
I think the difficulty, apart from lots of practical difficulties, is you'd get mission creep. So you would have rules, a horse would still die, the BHO or whoever was in charge of it would be criticised, the rules would get firmer and firmer and firmer. It would just keep happening, and eventually, you just end up with a a battleground of whether horses should or shouldn't be run, which is different from the trainer's assessment and the vet's assessment. And I just think that it's really not nearly as simple as people seem to think it might be.
And just like I said, just to finalise that, there are a lot more on-course checks now from BHA vets.
Yeah.
A lot of horses are getting pulled out after the pre-race, the pre-race trots, etc. And a lot of trainers think that's kind of like a bit excessive. But the BHA are making big strides in that area. If they got any doubts about a horse's soundness, they just pull the horse out. There was a classic. The biggest high-profile one was Conagry in a novice chase in the year he won the Gold Cup. There was a big furore about that. But yeah,
and the other thing I'd say is that the time to make changes to racing welfare rules is not in the wake of a sort of Twitter storm over a particular incident, because that's just an anecdotal example, and it's horrible. Of course, it's horrible, and you always think of the ways that the things that might have been changed to stop it happening. But that one, I just don't think will work.
Ivor Weatherly says our local club has 2 coaches going to Goodwood who have refused to supply paper tickets. So the organizer has the ball ache of having to pass 100+ digital tickets to people as we arrive for the coaches. Is this progress? I'll bring you in here, AK, maybe, because I remember you telling a story about a gentleman going into the race course who didn't have
I still get abused for that.
the one you didn't pay in for.
Yeah.
you tight bastard.
Yeah. Paid him the 30p to get on the bus. I don't know. It just sounds like, I just know about it as a business, and we're a small business, but like as a customer facing business, say our racetrack business, you're just trying to make everything as simple for the customer and do what the customer wants within reason. Printing off a few tickets doesn't sound like an outrageous request for what I imagine is probably quite a few over 50s maybe on a coach. It seems like just basic customer service it's brilliant that your man's got 2 coaches to go to Goodwood just in the first instance. I think the first impression of the track for those 140 people or how many people there are is just a negative one. Why would you start the journey on a negative like straight away? It's like that should be the exact opposite of the aim. It just seems like computer says no, can't pivot from. It's just the way business is going, isn't it? Like it's just very, very impersonal, I think. And yeah,
we had funny enough, we had a very similar situation with Open last week. All tickets are now, you download an app and they live on the app. And an awful lot of people going to the Open are over the age of 60. And it's absolutely fantastic if you're like savvy with your phone and you just open an app, find a ticket and ping through you go. But the queues that were created in the car parks and the tents by people who couldn't really either couldn't get their phone out get the access to the ticket quickly, or took hours. You wonder if it's something of a false economy.
It adds like a psychological pressure as well. Like it's like, I know myself from just now that my parents aren't even that old, but they're probably technologically not great. And every time they go through an airport, they're just constantly panicking. They're panicking all the time about, is my battery going to go out?
Yeah.
Like pure panic to the point where they just do not enjoy it at all.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that for someone's day out, I think you're just not understanding the human side of it, I think.
Yeah. Fair points, lads. Move on to Lug Morrigan, who says, with a change from everyone after the expensive bloodlines and different ownership models about, it seems to me that traditional big names like Galileo and Frankel aren't as much to the fore as once were. What does this mean for the future breeding and betting trends? Tony, you put your own hand up for this, which is
thank God for that.
Quite a difficult one to take.
Given that Galileo died in July 2021, I don't think you can blame him for betting.
Useless. He's gone to pot, he has.
And Frank was probably the worst example he could have given, because not only did he sire Mini Hawk and Diego Velasquez over the weekend and stuff, I think he actually stands for 350 grand.
Yeah.
So if you're if you're getting 350 grand for a squirt here and there, I suggest you're not doing too badly in life. So yeah.
Connor asking AK, have you seen the famous £3 lucky 15 bet that returned £20,000 with three winners? Has this happened recently? AK, have you
Yeah,
come across this?
that was the thing going around Twitter there recently. Just someone I know, Tom from Bucky Bashing, just made a post that he won 20 grand off a bet and hadn't realised, and got an absolute pile on for
Yeah, I
saying.
saw that.
Yeah, I have seen the slip. Yeah, it's but I learned. I still have my relapses now, but I learned a long time ago that replying to some of the dumbest members of society on Twitter is probably not the most optimal use of time. Um, yeah, I think Tom was
Did he
pretty
have the first three winners? Three win.
yeah, it was the first three, I think, yeah. And his fourth one was actually leading 3 out as well from memory. So yeah. Yeah. And it was a £3 each way, lucky 15.
That's the thing about affordability checks these days.
Mm,
Because if he stands to win an absolute fortune, he can't take an absolute fortune out of it
Yeah.
on an exchange, because if he loses five figures in isolation,
He can't
they're
get
going to
back
come
in.
after
Yeah.
him. So,
mm.
like I say, that's one of the massive downsides is you can't hedge anymore, and good, because if you lose, then it could be account closure job.
I have a very good. We might cut this out, but I'll say it anyway. I have a very funny story about a fella who had an Acker. It was either a Lucky 63 or something running up on Bet365, and as genuine as they come, pal of mine. And he had five winners, and he had something like 100 grand or 120 grand running up onto the last leg, and it was a race at Carlisle. It's the last race of the day at Carlisle. It was an amateur riders race, right? And I think he took something like 5-4 about the last horse or something. And he was like, "Oh, I've got this bet running up for like 120," and it banked 120 already, and then the last leg is like 5-4, and he was like, "Do you have any money in the machine? Can you lay some of this for me? I want to get out of it, right?" And I was like, "No problem." And I think I had 27k in the machine at the time, right? So I said, "No problem, you can use that. I'll lay the horse for you, no problem." So we laid this horse on the show at Carlisle in an amateur riders race, and started off laying it at like 6-4, and ended up the last price we laid was something like 100-30. And he went off 11-4 SP and won. And he got like 600 grand back off the guaranteed price. Like he got an absolute fortune out of the guaranteed price for us just late. And it was a genuine just trying to hedge, but can't hedge because there's no liquidity. And that was like 5 or 6 years ago. Madness, absolute madness.
That was at a friend of mine, was it?
Yeah, I know a genuine friend of mine. Yeah. Harry can tell
Very
us
good,
after
very
whether we
good.
have to cut that out or not.
You leave it in if you want. I wash my hands of you.
That's a genuine story, though.
Well, it's in.
Final question, gents. Why 80 asked, why shouldn't people in sorry, I should have said that last question was from Connor, just to give him his fair dues if I didn't. 80's asking as well, why shouldn't people in UK bet into the black market when we have awful customer service across the industry and gambling commission that won't look into individual cases or protect punters? Betting going back to its roots seems the future, Harry. So the kind of getting at the gambling commission there.
Just briefly, that there isn't enough difference between the white market and the black market. That is definitely the case. The regulated market and the black market. The reason you shouldn't bet into the black market is because you do have an awful lot more recourse and safety measures in the regulated market. They're not as good as they ought to be, and historically haven't been. Certainly, have almost been non-existent. But that's the ultimate reason you shouldn't get into the black market. If you are owed money by a regulated bookmaker, the chances are you will get it. If you're owed money by a black market bookmaker that decides not to pay out, the chances are you won't get it.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Gents, thanks very much for your time. Just to mention before we go, as usual, if you're having a bet this week on the AK Bets website, check out our AK big prices tab, we have lots of the biggest events happening right now. The women's Euros this week. We have the World Match Play darts outrights and matches up there, and also the Kerry versus Donegal All Ireland football final next Sunday, amongst other big events. So do check that out if you're having a bet. All to say now is thanks to the lads for the time, thanks to you for listening, and we'll catch you this time next week. Cheers.